Hello and welcome to episode 38 of Establish the Collection. I am your host, Cody Main, joined as always by Gary Hartman. Gary, the All-Star break is behind us. Nothing but NBA action lies ahead. This is your time to shine, brother. How are you feeling right now?
I'm good, man, especially and no offense to all my hockey fans out there, especially with my Rangers looking pretty good, but with no baseball on the horizon at all, and we've already had the first two series of the season be canceled with this strike that's going on, or the lockout that's going on. It is really all NBA waters ahead, with some F1 and with some UFC and our niche sports, but it's all basketball all the time. Look, really from now through June, right? So lots to look forward to. I'm doing well. Definitely feeling that grind, but really only like 25% left of the regular season, 25% left. So a lot of fun playoff races, and the NBA is just it never fails to disappoint. That's for sure. It's fun night in, night out.
Nothing but NBA ahead, with one minor caveat, and that is we will have USFL action beginning on April 16th. I'm really hoping. I've been keeping up with the news. I know we're going to get sports betting in a majority of the states that are currently legal, with some hurdles to kind of clear. I would imagine we will get DraftKings DFS with some pretty significant prize pools, especially if there is no baseball to be played.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a fun time, man. You guys know that I'm grinding the niche sports. You guys know that for the most part, Showdown on Thursday nights, Showdown on Monday nights is really not even professional football at this point. So anything that is barely professional football, I will be grinding. I don't know if we'll ever get any cards for it, but just as a quick aside, don't count your chickens here, because basketball is up at the forefront, but we will have some USFL action coming in the months.
I would not be surprised to see cards eventually too. We saw it with XFL. We've seen it with some weird things on football there. So hey, you never know. And I my thought with all those types of things are don't knock it till you try it. And us at ETR, we'll be all over the USFL, and Shea Patterson, #1 overall pick, and all that great stuff is coming. I can't believe it's already April 16th. Turnaround that they're going to get on this type of thing from the draft right into the season is pretty exciting. So
I mean, it's pretty wild. I don't know if they even have all of the everything ready to go at this point, right? It's been really quick turnaround. As you mentioned, draft just happened. I know that they locked down a stadium to play the games. It seems like they're working through the legal process for sports betting, which is obviously going to be a huge hurdle in order to gain mainstream adoption of this league. But yeah, it'll be pretty interesting to see. I can guarantee you that if there is DFS, I won't guarantee it, but I will say that if there's DFS, it's pretty likely that I will be covering it. And I will be playing it. So
let's go.
Let's pray for some USFL action, and let's pray that we can make some money in the DFS streets as well.
Yeah, that makes me excited. Anytime I get Cody Main coverage on anything football, I am very, very excited for that. Yeah, you know what? That's great. And I just hope we get a decent quality product. Like, they're trying to turn this thing around in 5 or 6 weeks. Like, do these guys even have playbooks? Do these coaches have schemes? Do these coaches know each other? What's going on? But I shouldn't be a skeptic. Let's just enjoy the beauty that is God's game in football.
We have Jeff Fisher on a sideline, which is really all that matters. If you're worried about playbooks, just trust your gut, brother, because we got Jeff Fisher calling plays. All right, enough. This is already way too much USFL talk for one episode.
Is it enough?
Last week, Gary was kind enough to rip a 2020-2021 NBA Prism retail box, give away a few of the best hits from that box to our loyal audience. So if you haven't already, please go check out that box break from episode 37 on the Establish the Run YouTube channel. There you can find all of our content under the Establish the Collection playlist. If you want to get your hands on some of Gary's cards, all we ask you guys to do, and you can smash the subscribe button, you can do all those fun things that we always appreciate you doing to help support our little show. But if you want to get your hands on some of Gary's cards, just while you're over there watching the video, watching him break his box, episode 37, just leave us a comment on that episode. It's the easiest way for us to parse out who actually took the time to watch the video and who wants the cards. We'll gather those names for next week's episode and give away. I think you had Anthony Edwards base Prism. You had a LaMelo. You had an Obi Toppin silver. I'm going to butcher this dude's name. Jamias Ramsey silver auto.
That was the auto we pulled. And hey, at least it was a silver auto rookie. But yeah, it's on the flagship ETR YouTube channel, as Cody said. The title of the episode is NFL All Day Marketplace Opens and Midseason NBA Awards. And you'll see Cody's silly face on there. And hey, I think you'll get some silly faces from me coming soon.
Let's go.
So
did you finally submit some headshots?
I finally had Kyle reach out to me about getting some headshots out there. So I'm going to work on taking some of those this weekend. We'll get some silly thumbnails from my dumb looking face as well. So just go over there. And we've already had a bunch of comments on the video that you're already entered in, but we're going to give it another week because the video did go up a couple of days after the audio. So get over there. Please do like the video while you're at it, but all we ask is a comment on the video and you're entered to win those 4 cards. We're going to do 4 different giveaways for, some solid 2021 Prism cards. And we'll do that at the top of next week's episode.
And while we're thinking about it, if you're listening on the podcast feed, like most of you are, if you haven't already, go subscribe, rate, review, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever it may be. Those things, those small things, free, help us reach as many sports collectors as we possibly can and grow this little show out. So we really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
All right, housekeeping items out of the way. Last week, we wet our beak by giving out some midseason NBA card market awards, which you dubbed Ja Morant as the NBA's most valuable card market to this point of the 2021-2022 season. That call has been magnified over the last couple of days since you made that bold proclamation. Memphis dropped a close game, and we're recording Thursday night, but Memphis dropped a close game a week ago in Minnesota. But since then, man, all he's done 46, 52, 38, respectively, in back-to-back games. They dropped one tonight on the road in Boston. But, man, he's taken over social media again with the dunks, with the second quarter buzzer beaters. It's been all Ja Morant. So, of course, we talked last week that nobody has done more to solidify themselves as a long-term hobby name than Ja Morant. A few more career games under his belt. How are you feeling about that call for midseason NBA award? And you've got some big boys on your hand, man. You've got some big, big cards on your hand. What are we doing with Ja Morant right now, and how are you feeling about your investment?
I really do, man. Feeling great about the investment. I am terrified every single night he goes out there that he's going to fall down the wrong way and but for right now, I'm enjoying the ride. I mean, you mentioned tonight they lost the game. They dropped the game in a tough game on the road in Boston. Boston's got the best defense in the league. But even in this game, as you mentioned, 38 points, 7 assists, another just absolute highlight. It was a give and go alley-oop from Kyle Anderson with his offhand goes up with a one-handed alley-oop. And this guy's a guard. I mean, you have to see it to believe it, the things he does on a nightly basis. And I mean, it's Iverson stuff. It's just and better, honestly, in a lot of ways. And I remember Iverson only to an extent, but the dynamicism, the dynamic ability, you know what I'm saying?
Close enough.
It is. I'm tired, everyone. The dynamic ability is truly on display every single time he graces the floor. And I feel like really what we're doing with Ja right now is kind of what we were doing with Joe Burrow for the last 4 or 5 episodes of the NFL season, where we had to kind of lead every episode with Joe Burrow because he was both king of the field and of the hobby. And Ja is kind of feeling that way for hoops right now.
It's like this. I feel like where you're at in this position where he is, as you've mentioned previously on the show many times, that he's one of your most heavily invested players. This is the product that you were ripping most when you were getting back into this hobby. It almost feels like you're at this point where you just keep hoping you can push this back a little bit and keep maximizing that window while still holding as much product as you can long-term, the stuff that you really believe in long-term. So I know a lot of the people out there listening are probably in the same boat that you are, that I was, ripping this Zion product, ripping this Ja product. What are we doing with Ja specifically right now? What should our audience be doing? Selling low end stuff? Should we continue to hold and just keep pushing this thing back as far as we can closer to the postseason, maybe awards time? Is there going to be a point in this season specifically where we get that Ja peak?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I'm going to kind of probably reiterate some of the things I said last week, but I'm going to try to expand upon it as well. And I think either way, I think it's worth repeating. So generally, my thought here is, if you're not selling Ja Morant between now and whenever you think that the Grizzlies are going to be eliminated from the playoffs, you are looking at Ja as a long-term investment. I'm starting to hedge that thought a little bit just with how good he's been in that. I'm starting to think maybe he can be an all-time great. Now, you don't see that come out of players of his size, particularly of his more skinny nature, those type of players. You don't see that too much as far as this. But man, if the NBA does this right, we could really market this guy as like the next big thing, right? Like Steph level, love from every, like just basically unanimous approval rating type of superstar. He has that upside, the flash, everything. So in that sense, I'm starting to maybe think, if you don't want to subscribe to my general theory that you're either selling over the next 3 months or you're holding it as like you're waiting till Ja's, towards the end of his career, like you're looking at it as long-term investment, because I would have a hard time thinking he's going to reach peaks higher than this season for a lot of reasons. One, pop counts are going to continue to rise. Two, it's very hard to imagine that we are going to see we might see higher Ja Morant peaks on the court, but I don't know if we're ever going to see higher Ja Morant hype off the court, where he's dominating every kind of SportsCenter NBA conversation. He's leading SportsCenter every night with his highlights. He's, still starting to really just enter, the top of the lexicon of every NBA fan, both casual and diehards. So just where he's dominating the conversation so much in his MVP race now, where he has his team in a top 3 seed, just all the perfect storm in his third year. All that perfect storm. I just don't know if we're ever going to see that hype again, where the card market is also still pretty strong. In general, the hobby's growing still to an extent, with things happening with Fanatics, all the things that are keeping the hobby at the forefront for this guy. I don't know if we'll ever see this kind of this stew of things ever kind of reach this boiling point again. So I think I feel comfortable enough saying that you have this window while he's healthy this season, knock on wood, to maximize profits for what is, there's a good chance, I would say there's like a 30 to 50% chance that this will be the peak of his hobby this season. Now, when I say I tried to start to hedge that a little bit, it's because he's showing me things that I never thought we would really see as far as ceiling is concerned. So maybe he could be better than that. Maybe he can consistently be a top 8, player in the league for 10 years. That's possible. And then this might be wrong, but for what I'm doing, both low, mid, high, I want to sell off a lot of my position over the next 3 months. And then if I feel like I can get back in over the next couple of years at times where it may be down a little bit, I'd probably feel comfortable with that, just given the kind of player he is. But yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to do. I feel like I'm like almost prospect huggy, like a baseball fan. Like I don't really want to let go of some of this stuff. And yeah, am I trying to push back a little bit as we approach the playoffs? And he's going to be on the biggest stage a little bit, but that presents its own risk. So slowly but surely, I'm offloading certain things. I'm kind of maybe more hesitant to pull the trigger on some of my higher end stuff as I try to really maximize value. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to keep some. Obviously, luckily, I have enough inventory to do that. But that's where I'm at. I think all different levels, low, mid, high. I think you cannot go wrong, as much as I hate to say it, selling Ja Morant right now.
I think it was shortly after we recorded last week. It looked like he went down. If I remember right, it looked like he might have a lower body injury, a hip injury or something like that. I was at that point, I was just like, oh, this is how it ends. Totally. It's the injury. It saps the athleticism, some of the dynamic ability. He obviously comes back, is doing his thing. He's got the Grizzlies as a 3 seed in an extremely tough Western Conference right now. This thing is this hype train, I think, is going to continue to keep rolling as we head closer to the postseason. But you do have to start looking at these things from a perspective of how much higher can this short-term peak go. We look at his silver prism with a pop count of 1,282 right now. And as you mentioned, continuing to grow. Last sold for $2,124. And we talk about some of those guys, and the guy that you mentioned last week, who's kind of in a similar vein, older class, different level of, kind of social media icon status at this point, but Donovan Mitchell, much lower pop count from an earlier rookie class, and much lower sale point. So, you start to think about these things in that sense. How much more room is there to grow for Ja Morant's mid-tier stuff, especially like this, the high-end stuff, as you mentioned, and we should really get into that tiger stripe too, because I am curious to see if there's been any movement there. But this mid-tier stuff, this low-end stuff, it seems like there's a pretty good peak here, as we know that these pop counts are going to continue to rise as PSA continues to work through. This seems like a really good window here, as you mentioned, over the next couple of months to offload some of that position. High-end stuff, though, maybe a slightly different story. Talk to me a little bit about that Tiger Stripe PSA 10. If you guys didn't listen to last week's show, Gary's got a massive Ja Morant card, one of probably the best Prism cards that you could possibly get, aside from the gold and the one of ones and things like that. But a really awesome Tiger Stripe PSA 10, only 7 out there right now. We kind of broke the news to Gary on the show last week that this is now on Card Ladder.
I was shocked.
It's pretty surprising.
Yeah.
Has anything happened, any movement with your potential cash deal and trying to avoid the IRS at this point with
we're going to have to stop talking about that on here. You never know who's listening. And I have one very ethical wife. Anyway, my father-in-law is going to get a kick out of that joke when he listens to this. Anyway, yeah, I still in hand. I still and I have the offer out there at card ladder value for cash in person.
Oh
so that's a pretty good deal. And I don't think he's going away from it. I mean, the guy wants the card, and he might be listening to this now at this point too. And if you are, I don't mean to be dragging you along, sir. You seem like a very nice gentleman and a stand-up buyer. I have my hesitancies because let's talk about the high end, right? I think I agree everything you just said about low and mid. I think, as you mentioned, we're probably reaching peaks here. And yeah, can we get a little bit higher if he wins a playoff series and if he really, goes out and inserts himself into this MVP conversation? Sure. But I think, the levels of jump from where he is right now is going to be minimal compared to stuff that is so low pop and so low circulation and so high end that, we don't know what the ceilings are on those kind of cards. We see golden post record sales on these things all the time. Like I saw Joe Burrow Gold Prism yesterday. Once sold for $16,000, now just sold for $50,000, right? Mm-hmm. We see these $40,000 jumps in these types of cards all the time because there are so limited out there, and there are people that will want them if they have the money to spend them, and because it is such a rare an asset of an elite a player or sought after investment piece at this point. So things like that, things like I wish I had the true out of 99 RPA, but I've showed this card too, just the National Treasures out of 75 RPA. I saw this sold for $20,000 on eBay a month ago. Wow. This exact card, BGS 9. I think it's probably what 20. That's 1 month ago, right? What would it call it now? 25, 30? I don't know. How do you put a price on things like this? So I'm hesitant on the Tiger Stripe, and I also have that Dragon Scale, right, of the Donruss Optic. I'm hesitant on some of these cards. I still think I will let go of I let go of the Marble out of 5 last week, which I did that around $10,000 or whatever. And I honestly think maybe I went too soon, but you can't have seller's remorse on this kind of stuff. But I do think that if I do this the right way, at the right time within these next 3 months, I could really maximize profits. And I just don't want to shoot myself in the foot where, hey, I have this amazing offer on the table right now, and then he goes down with an ankle injury or whatever. But I do think that's the only thing that makes this card go down until he's eliminated from the playoffs. So I don't know, man. I'm still debating. I'm hoping I'm not going to hold it too long, but for now, I'm kind of weighing my options still on the high end.
It's so much easier to have the hesitancies on this stuff and to have that feeling of like, man, I'm selling a little bit too early, as opposed to the silver, right? Like that silver with a pop count of 1,200, that's right now selling for $2,000. Like if it sells for 2,200 next week and you sold it at $2,000, you don't feel as bad as if you sold a Tiger Stripe that there's only 7 PSA 10 in existence right now, and you sell that for 25, and that next month it's worth 50, right? Yeah. There's a big delta
and
there.
For all we know, like I have it on eBay for 40 right now. Which
you could get a snap buy right.
Somebody might pick that up in a couple of weeks. It's possible, right? That's one thing. And for all we know, if I send it to Golden and it was in their April auction, right? I took it down off eBay. It was in their April auction. He just continues this ascent for another month. I think it can go higher than what I have it on eBay right now. You don't know what some people don't use eBay. Some people prefer to go the auction house route. They feel it's safer as far as kind of just transfer of hands, all that kind of stuff. You don't know what kind of bidder out there. Now, at that same time, it might end at 20, where I have a 25 offer right now. So obviously these are the risks you're and things you're weighing when you're dealing with such low pop, rare, high value cards. We'll continue to talk it through. If I have it next week, we'll kind of address this in a shorter conversation again. But it's a fascinating thing to consider. One that I don't have too much experience with since I've been kind of doing this as a real business, as far as kind of like where I'm in the heat of things. I have some of the most sought after rare high end cards of a specific player, and I'm really kind of struggling with selling window. I really am.
All right, I want to springboard this conversation and not to get like too sports takey and too sports radio-y here, but
you kidding me? I grew up on Mike and the Mad Dog, Cody. We can get as
this
sports radio and Tucky.
You do a really good Mad Dog impression. So if you could just come back at me with some Mad Dog, I would love that.
Michael, I don't know what you're talking about there.
And now it's great because it's him and Stephen A. So it's even better.
Dude, I would pay money to see that every week. It's God's gift, those clips. I'll tell you that much. Seriously.
All right, we've given Ja his flowers here off the front of the show, right? He was the 102 of the 2019 class. I would say a very distant 1B in the collectibles hobby to Zion Williamson, who was a very clear 1A, runaway favorite from that class, the most sought after collectible from that product. If you look back to January 22nd, so we're talking a month and a half ago now, that was really the first time that Ja's Prism Silver PSA 10 sold higher than Zion's. We kind of got this flippening, right, where we finally see Ja take over from that class. You go all the way back to the preseason where there's still questions swirling about Zion's health. His Silver PSA 10 was still fetching $4,000, so down 65% already this year, and for good reason, right? Last selling for around $1,400 on February 27th. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more than just what's going on off the court with him and his recovery and his return to play, all of the rumors swirling. Is this flippening between Ja and Zion legit? Like if you could get a crystal ball out right now and predict 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, whose card market is going to be more valuable, knowing what you know about both players, is it just a slam dunk, easy open and shut case that it's going to be Ja? Or is there some reason for us at current prices, and if this continues to dip lower for Zion, is there some reason for us to maybe bet on Zion's market now that it's dipped so much?
More parallels between Joe Burrow and Ja Morant here, where Justin Herbert, and was for so long, by far the highest prices in that football class, and then things flipped towards the end of the season. Obviously, the difference here is Zion hasn't graced the court in a very, very long time, and he's nowhere to be found. All bad news coming out of the Zion camp almost consistently, and then we don't know where he's going to be in New Orleans. Man, yeah, I mean, obviously, if you put a gun to my head, I would say that Ja Morant is now in 5 years and in 20 years, the better investment piece, probably the better player. He's showing things in year 3 that we didn't know his ceiling ever really was. We knew he was a great dynamic, probably multi-time All-Star. I don't think we knew that he would be this right away, which this is what we thought. And I think people got a little confused in the clip that we put out last week. I was saying, I said, he's doing all the things that we wanted the number 1 overall pick to do. Yeah. And I wasn't saying Ja Morant was the number 1 overall pick. I was referring to one Zion Williamson, who was number 1 overall pick. And we expected these things. And we saw it when he was on the court last year. But now everything is just going the wrong way. I don't know if his body's sustainable for what the modern NBA is. And I understand the dip. I mean, I completely understand the dip. Obviously, pop counts continue to rise. He was selling at prices that were unworldly, and we haven't seen him. And now people are trying to get off those positions a little bit. And obviously, you're going to see that go way down. It sucks for me. I have 2 silver PSA 10 Zions. Never pulled the trigger on selling either of them, and I'm not going to do it now. I'd rather wait. I'd rather wait for him to come back. So, it's really hard. Now, I'm going to throw the question back to you as we do a little sports radio here. Would you be buying, or would you rather be selling Ja Morant at his peaks right now, or buying Zion Williamson at his floors? Like, what if you had to choose one of those 2 things, what would you be doing right now?
I think it's
a different question than
it is a different question, but I think if I had to choose just one, I would be selling Ja before I would be buying Zion. That it just feels like the bottom could completely fall out. And you mentioned like people willing to sell now to take profits. If this doesn't get any resistance, like let's just use his silver PSA 10 as an example right now, that's got a pop count of whatever 1,400 right now. If this doesn't get any resistance around 1,200, 1,100, 1,000, and it drops below $1,000, like how far is that really going to fall out? Like that, once you reach that mental hurdle of $1,000, right, for a player's market, how much lower is that going to go? And we just saw that absurd sale for his true RPA that we had talked about a couple of weeks ago. Like, how many more of those are we going to see? And like, if you're really low in and you're investing like base stuff, like it just feels like this could completely fall out on him if he doesn't get back to action next year, or I just don't understand like how much more his market could fall off from this point now. Whereas like, yeah, maybe I miss out by selling Ja like a month too early and I missed out on like 10% profit, where I feel like if I was buying Zion right now, maybe it drops another 30% before, he comes back.
I would say I would be interested in buying Zion at some point before the offseason, before we get so let's assume he's not going to really play again this year, right? I mean, there's only 20% of the season left, and there was a report yesterday that his foot is progressing. There's always been this very vague stuff. The Pelicans came out with a season ticket letter where they didn't even mention him. I mean, the tea leaves are not good there for Zion in New Orleans, right? So what that does mean for him, if and when he does eventually come back, I mean, he's still, at 22 years old or whatever, and can easily be the guy we want him to be, just because we forget Joel Embiid went through this too, right? He couldn't stay healthy for the first 2-3 years of his career, and he barely played any basketball in his life, and now look at him. I mean, he's the MVP favorite, right? So I'm not ready to write the kid off in any way. So what I would do is if we think that the only way this can continue to go as long as he's off the court is down, I would at some point before the end of the regular season, or maybe even in the playoffs when even more eyes are off of the Pelicans and of him, I probably would be interested in doing some Zion Williamson buying before any offseason stories come up, as far as picking up his third-year option, picking up future options, trade rumors, all that stuff. And just, then we get the offseason videos of him working out. I think I'd be interested, depending on what this kind of stuff does go to, because, I still think he is a generational type talent. Just the question is, what is the price that you're willing to bet on him ever actually having a real NBA career? And to me, for like something like the Silver Prism, when it did or a grand, because it's not like the pop of 1,400 is like crazy. Right. We're not talking like a 5,000 or like some of those Luis Robert pops, right? Or what we're going to see out of Wander Franco and stuff like that. We're talking somewhat sustained for the silver. Now the base stuff, I don't think I'd go to too much out there, and just too much of a floor for me. But anything silver or better, I think I would be interested in doing some buying as the dip continues.
I think we should take this as like a more macro look now, because we've talked about selling Ja, potentially buying maybe as we inch closer to the offseason with Zion. If you look back to last year's basketball market as a whole, and I kind of want to take this more macro now before we get into some player specifics, but you see this pretty significant trend upwards last year leading into the All-Star break. Obviously, the season started in December last year, so a little bit different timelines there, but also, we should keep in mind that the early part of last season was kind of the run-up of the peak of the card market bull run as a whole, right? And then we finally started to see this leveling off and a little bit of a sell-off of the base market and what have you. But I'd like to start there, just kind of from a macro sense for the remainder of this basketball season. I am curious how much of last year's second half slump that we saw in the card market as a whole, in the basketball card market, was more just in relation to this shift of kind of the base card slumping a little bit, and how much it was just a shift in people focusing less on the basketball market as players get eliminated, teams get eliminated. You get a shift more a little bit towards baseball. You get NFL offseason talk. So I'm curious, are we going to see a similar downwards trend in the second half of the NBA season this year?
I think it'll be a little bit less this year, because I think you hit the main point for me right at the end of your you set up there, in that baseball was here last year, right? And baseball, say what we want about baseball as far as a topic that gets talked about, as far as losing popularity every single year. It still has its market. Bowman still does really, really well. Topps does really well. We still see crazy numbers on prospect cards and Mike Trout cards and Ohtani cards and things like that. And the second that April 1st rolls around and, the baseball's really under the swing of things, that market does pick up steam. There's just no doubt about it. And guys like Vlad Guerrero hit the scene last year, and guys do shift their focus. There's no doubt about it. And so I think that would definitely be one factor in the reason things go down. I think the other factor is, as you ramp up in the regular season, people are starting to invest in players that they think can be in award races and in playoff races. And, this is a new guy that jumps onto the scene. There's always like the Jordan Pooles early on in the year, and these guys that, get off to such a hot start out of nowhere. And then their teams settle into rotations and guys come back from injury, and, the season just kind of gets into more of a lull and just kind of, kind of on cruise control. And those names kind of fall out a little bit. And that continues to happen, obviously, through the All-Star break. And particularly, I think as teams fall out, and so guys are watching less, right? So as teams get eliminated, I think there's less sales all around those types of players, right? People are trying to kind of time selling, guys when their teams are hot, whatever it may be. So I think one of the other reasons we see overall sales volume go down and even some peaks go down is, teams get eliminated and people are just start so focused on selling certain players as they're in the limelight, particularly around the playoffs. So I think that will continue just because it's what makes sense, right? Over the next 2 months, we're going to see less and less teams be relevant, probably less and less, of wider players be, focused of, people that collectors are searching for. So, and it's going to kind of focus in on our real contenders. So I think that those are all the reasons, but I would expect it to be a little bit less than last year for the reason of A, no baseball, and B, because peaks didn't get as high this year as they did last year. Just given that we were in the middle of last basketball season was like the peak of all this stuff, right? And we've kind of been in a more healthy, settled down card market this NBA season. So I don't think it has as much room to necessarily fall down now here in the second half.
So there might actually be some in-season buying opportunities for guys that people are willing to sell off once their teams are eliminated or once they're eliminated from awards races and things like that. I find that we might get so focused on these off-season buying windows for players when sometimes they start or they may even peak towards the end of the regular season or certainly in the playoffs as teams are already eliminated. So I think we can maybe identify some of those. Let's talk about some of those guys here. I don't know if you've got a few names. There's a few guys that I think might be in playoff contention, might be in award contention that are worth talking about, and I think markets are still not as hot as they should be. I want to kick it off with the guy. This is an easy topic to talk about because he's been out for so long, but a guy coming back from injury, a guy that was kind of a third tier of that 2018 market, but really gained some hobby love. Michael Porter Jr., a guy that steamed up quite a bit from that 2018 class, but injured his back 9 games into this season, which, obviously to me raises an immediate long-term red flag simply because of the back issues that this guy's already dealt with. We get the report recently that he's cleared for contact, could return sometime in March. Mike Malone was quick to throw a wet blanket on that, but then since then we've gotten reports that, he looks to be cleared for the G League, and we are going to get some Michael Porter Jr. action back at some point this season, it seems like. We did see a pretty significant plummet in his card market as his silver PSA 10 fell 71% since October 14th, last selling for around $250 on February 27th. When he was playing last season, he was balling, man. Like, we were getting a really good offensive player in Michael Porter Jr., averaging 19 and 7 a game, shot 44.5% from three. Perfect complement for Nikola Jokic. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here by buying the news that he's returning from injury, and if that's going to have any significant impact as his card market goes the remainder of the year, and if he's really even a long-term investment. But his market's down big, still plenty of questions surrounding his health. I think that, we could kind of see this rekindling of a flame that the hobby had for this guy from this 2018 class if he comes back and looks good when he returns to action. Is it premature to buy someone like Michael Porter Jr. coming off the rumor or the news that he's going to get back to action sometime soon?
No, I don't think it's premature. And I mean, you're seeing some people do it a little bit. I mean, not many sales, but over the last month or so on that silver, like in 13 sales, it's back up around 10%. In the last 3 months on 44 sales, it actually, I think people identified it dipping too much because it's in the green. But as you mentioned, over the last year and 6 months, it's down 50, 60, 70%. I don't think it's too premature. I mean, for this specific case, I just have issues or I have concerns of his just general ability to stay healthy, right? I mean, that's a different story. But as far as the player is concerned, and I think talent, and as far as if you are looking to buy Porter Jr., I think this would be the time over the next month or so before he comes back, because Jamal Murray is coming back for the Nuggets, right? Mm-hmm. We know that's happening, and Jokic is playing as well as ever. If Porter does come back, this team could be a sleeping giant in the West. I wouldn't be surprised to see them make some noise. So, if he does come back and looks good and is making an impact on this team, yeah, your buying windows are now. So I don't think that's a premature, take at all. And he's somebody that I also still believe in the talent long term, just even more so than somebody like Zion. I'm truly concerned about his ability to stay healthy for the rest of his career, just given that he had serious chronic back problems coming into the league, and it's the reason he fell to 13 or 14 whenever he did get drafted.
I had to get down on a little Nuggets futures action when I got the news that he was coming back and the news that Jamal Murray would likely be back sometime in April or maybe in the into the postseason. So I got down on a little bit of Nuggets action.
I like it.
And just a quick reminder, we don't talk about alt a whole lot, or My Slabs, or some of these places where alternatives to eBay, if you will. But when I saw the news alert come through, there were a few listings on alt that looked a little stale. I was keeping an eye on what sales were doing on Card Ladder. picked off a few of those silver prisms on alt for below what they were selling for on auction.
Nice.
So felt good
Nice.
about that. Just a reminder, just to keep an eye on these alt sites. It's like price shopping lines, right? If you're betting player props, like just check out the options that you have. I think there was an auction that just went on eBay, just ended either today or yesterday, that I was watching for Porter Jr. that ended at like 265, and I was picking them off on alt at like 240. So minor differences there, but like if you're doing this thing in bulk and volume, just keep in mind that there are other sources than eBay to pick up some cards for a little bit less than auction values in some cases. All right,
totally, absolutely.
Enough on Porter Jr. Who's do you got any buys, sells, holds for the second half of the season?
Yeah, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yes, I had him written down. I love this.
Yeah,
Talk to me.
So finally back playing, even on back-to-backs. I mean, the Thunder are weird with him, obviously. They're still continuing to tank, and he's a top 20 guy in the league, man. He's a top 20, top 25 guy in the league when he's healthy. He's an excellent player, man. Like he went out and beat the Nuggets last night. Speaking of the Nuggets, and the last 3 games, I mean, he's been dominant. I don't have his game logs in front of me, but even so, over the last, if you look at his silver, only a pop of 501 on the PSA 10. Not too many sales over the last month or so, but still down on the season. And I would expect for things like his silver, even if you're looking at like things like Optic or whatever, I would expect that to continue as the Thunder become even more relevant. The Thunder look for reasons to sit him even more as the season goes on. And as, really, the focus goes all the way off these lottery teams and onto the playoff race team. So over the last year, silver PSA 10 down 63%. I mean, these reached highs during the peak last March, about a year ago, of $1,400.
That card is so cheap.
$1,400. So cheap. It's $450 on Cardano right now. I think that's an excellent buy right now. Yes. I think you'll have opportunities to buy it throughout the next 2 or 3 months and into the offseason, but really, really bullish on SGA. I'm going to be doing some SGA buying, over the next couple months for sure, because really like this guy. And hey, I don't think the Thunder are going to be getting rid of him. But I actually, depending on where they land in this draft, if they can get Jabari Smith or Chet Holmgren or Pablo Banchero and really get one of these top 3 picks in the 2022 NBA draft, I'm all the way in on Josh Giddey also. So I think they are developing a core here. We saw the Cavs turn it around really quickly. I would not be so surprised to see Shai Gilgeous-Alexander playing in meaningful games as soon as next year or the year after, if they do get one of those top 3 picks this year. So I think that's important too. But the kid's still very, very young. He checks all the boxes. He has the opposite issue. I mean, he's dealt with some injury stuff, but I think it's a little bit more fluky. I think he's got the body that I'm not too concerned about long-term durability with. So love SGA, man. And if we're just talking about guys that we're thinking about kind of fading into the background as the NBA season goes on, he's top of the list for me.
I'm setting price alerts on Card Ladder right now. I absolutely love this call. I wrote Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in my notes, and then I wrote in parentheses so many outs. Right? There's just so many ways that this guy's value can increase.
Yeah.
Playing in meaningful games continues to take another leap. We get this next year where it's like, oh, we knew this kid was good. We didn't realize he was that good. And all of a sudden he vaults himself into MVP consideration. Like, there's just so many ways that this can go right, and still just 23 years old. And obviously being, part of the ETR team, we love SGA. Yeah. Probably as much as we love Jokic, but I just love this call, man.
Because I have a box of cards next to me at all times. I have a second year SGA flawless on card auto. I think this would be like his first one in the Thunder uniform too, is out of 25. So even if you want to pick up things like this, like on card autos, I just came out of focus. It's weird. On card autos, patch autographs, whatever, I think is a totally fair game. Second year colors, I think, are interesting too for SGA. So really like all different types of SGA buys. I just think he's so. And the other out, I mean, if this doesn't go their way over the next year and a half, I think their only option at that point,
ship him out.
Presti looks to chip him out, right? So, I think as you say, I think there are a lot of outs, and also as his profile grows more, who knows if he just pulls, a big time, goes out in big times with Thunder and says, we know the player empowerment era. If he decides he wants out and he joins a big 2 or big 3 or whatever, as you mentioned, lots of outs for him becoming even bigger star than he already is, kind of buried in OKC.
All right, I'm going to hit one more guy before maybe we hit a little rapid fire here before we go too long on this recording. But we're recording on the night of his 16th birthday. I'm joking. It's his 24th birthday.
He's on my list too. Yeah.
After a game where he posted 37, dropped 21 in the fourth quarter, he's got the Celtics right in the thick of things again. And as you mentioned off the top, this is one of the best defenses in the league right now. They've won 13 of their last 15. The Derek White thing seems to be big trade for them, really helping them. Marcus Smart still playing, just dealing with the Jalen injury right now. But Jason Tatum, man, this is a guy who has seemingly been on kind of that cusp of superstardom now for like 2+ years. And we've just been waiting with bated breath for him to take, the leap, right? Like, when is he going to actually vault himself into true superstardom? So he comes from that 2017 Prism rookie class where pop counts, as we've talked about in recent shows, are just muted very much from this ultra modern stuff. So I'm curious from your perspective, because I'm a believer in kind of the underlying metrics of his silver market. I think the price looks good in comparison to his actual basketball relevance. Are we going to see this, just from a basketball perspective, from what you're watching, are we going to ever see this kind of final transformation of Tatum where he does elevate into that guy we've always wanted him to be?
Yeah, I do think we see it at some point here. And it is because he's 14 and still has so much room to grow. But that
20 years from now, he'll be in his prime.
Right. He's just going to reach his prime. So, at that point he's got, but the thing is, what the reason I like this is, even for this year, look, I don't agree with like 538 saying that the Celtics have the best chance of winning the championship. I don't agree with that, but I understand it as far as the analytics saying that maybe that's the case, because they do have like unworldly defensive numbers right now. They're starting five. Whether you put White or Horford in that mix is like kind of like crazy per 48 minute numbers, like 88 points type thing. So really nuts what they might be able to do. And I'm a full believer in his overall talent. He if he could just put it all together, he has these upside of, who are the true greats in this game. A lot of times it's players that look and as far as size and athleticism and, just general natural scoring ability. It's those types of guys. He plays in the big market. If he ever leads the Celtics to a championship, lots of, as we talk about outs, lots of outs or paths to him becoming, just a consensus top 10 guy and an all-time great. So no problem with the Tatum call at all. And I also look at him as one of these guys that if the trend does, we're talking about macro a little bit. If the trend does kind of continue like it did last year, where we saw a hard dip after the All-Star break, I would expect him to be one of the guys that bucks that trend this year as the Celtics continue to ascend, higher up the playoff seedings and potentially, get to like an Eastern Conference Finals or something like that. If they do pull something like that off, I would continue to see him I would expect him to avoid that big dip. So I wouldn't be selling Tatum right now.
Love it. All right. That's what I've got for my, my big second half buys that I'm interested in. I wrote down SGA again, a special note asterisk by him that Gary loves him as well. Going to set up the price alerts on SGA and see if I can scoop some of that. All right. Who else do you have on your list right now?
Yeah, so the other guys I had just were kind of like real buy lows. So Zion, we talked at length about. I think Kawhi is worth looking at. We obviously just named a NBA best 75 player of all time, has the championship rings under his belt. We don't know what the deal is with Kawhi because he's Kawhi. So
he's Kawhi.
We'll never know what the deal is with Kawhi. But I think is there an outside chance he returns this year? Probably. I don't think anyone really knows. But if he does, I think, it would be because he's feeling good enough to help kind of lead this team into the play-in or wherever they're going to be and really help them win. So I'm trying to get some sales ad up on him right now. But I just think that he is someone, down 77% over last year on the base Prism, which from 2012, you can look at the base market, no problem. Not too many sales over last month, but down 8% on 17 sales. $600. This is a card I used to target at like $800. The 2012 Prism rookie. So really like that at $600. Yeah, I think he comes back next year, and even so, I just like him as a hold long term. He doesn't need to. He's a Hall of Famer no matter what. Doesn't have to do too much. So it's not often that you can get like a top 10, 15 guy in the league who's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer who's got championship pedigree, when he's down and out and his market's down. So I just kind of like looking at somebody like him.
If you guys got into this hobby like I kind of really did during the pandemic and really kind of rekindled your love for collecting cards and trying to make this an investable hobby and make a little bit of money on the side, you probably were blown away by some of the prices that you saw. Like, man, this is just, how am I ever going to get my hands on some of this stuff? Kawhi Silver PSA 10 has a high of $26,250. It's got a pop count of 40, right?
Yeah.
Last sold on August. We haven't seen any sales since August. It's again, pop count of 40. You probably won't see too many too often. Sold for $9,800.
Wow.
I can't, like, how low is that? Would that
I don't think I would have, I would have guessed, I would have never guessed that dipped under 5 figures, that card.
Yeah.
The silvers from 2012 are just so freaking rare. And when it's a rookie, one of the rookies of that prime class, right?
Yeah.
It's the AD, the Kyrie, but Kawhi is he's really the pinnacle from it. I mean, you have Draymond and you got, Beal and Clay and a lot of Hall of Famers in there, but Kawhi is the guy that, maybe along with AD, but Kawhi is the guy that's really the top tier, proven Hall of Famer, championship winner, and I guess Anthony Davis. But, I wouldn't, with the silver in a PSA 10 of that class, I would have never expected that to dip below 10K. So really, really, yeah. I mean, and then when you have opportunities on guys like that, and hey, man, LeBron too. Like, let's see. I don't want to get into maybe we should save that for a topic in the coming weeks here, depending on which way this goes for the Lakers. But kind of a macro view at LeBron's market, I know, has been pretty far down over the last 6 months or so. If things go really bad for this Lakers team, and that stuff dips really low heading into this offseason, I think it's never bad to buy LeBron James long term. It's never bad. Anything rare at all. It doesn't even have to be low. Maybe it doesn't have to be super low end, but like anything mid end and higher, I think is solid.
We don't look favorably right now on the situation with LA, and obviously with LeBron the GM versus LeBron the player right now, but history in 5, 10, 15, 20 years is unlikely to remember this 100%. Tiny microcosm of his career, right? So it's bad. And I'm, as a LeBron fan and as a pseudo Lakers fan, simply because LeBron's in town, they're done. This team is done. There's no chance that there's any chance of them turning this around. So yeah, you can throw in the towel on this Lakers experiment. I don't know what's going to happen with LeBron next, but yeah, any time is a good time to buy LeBron James. I wanted to throw one rookie name out there real quick, and we don't have a ton of rookie products yet, but looking at the Top Shot market right now, there's one guy that I'm super excited about, and I've been really laser focused on these Toronto games as I'm getting back into playing NBA DFS. The Scotty Barnes, man, really stands out to me as a player. And looking at the Top Shot market, he is a clear third behind Mobley and behind Cade Cunningham. So I'm curious what your thoughts are when we actually get physical products in our hands. I can scoop up as many Top Shot moments as I want with Scotty Barnes, but when we start to get physical products in our hands and Prism comes out and some of these higher end products come out, do we get the same sense that Barnes is going to be a clear third? Is this somebody that we should be targeting in box breaks or in singles, or is there a reason why he's a third and maybe I'm misguided?
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll be right around there, third or fourth, probably third-ish out the gate, as you mentioned. I think, obviously, I think it'll be Cade and Mobley 1, 2. I would expect him and Jalen Green and Giddey to kind of be in a cluster of next, guys that hold interest there. No, but I'm with you, man. Like his upside is really strong, and as someone that watches a lot and kind of really breaks this down from team basketball for TFS purposes to try to figure out how the way teams play, it's hard for me to. It's gotten hard for me to get excited about him as like a huge stats guy right out the gate, as just because he does everything well and he's such a team player, But if I'm thinking about him ever being a dominant type superstar, I can see it just because of his versatility, his ability to play multiple positions, his ability to defend right away, also his ability to be so polished and make the right play at such a young age, where I could see him kind of taking a leap, being an alpha. Haven't seen it yet. Obviously, we're 4 or 5 months into his entire career, but we did see it, this week when they were out Fred VanVleet, and he had one of his best games in a long time. And I think he was a 4th overall pick for a reason. Definitely bullish on his long-term outlook for sure. Just been going back and forth in my head if I could see him being one of these transcendent hobby names. I do think that he has the ability to get there for sure.
Awesome. Love it. Any other names you want to drop, either from a buying, selling, or holding perspective in the second half of the season?
I just think like somebody like Devin Booker is also a guy that can kind of buck that trend of the dips too far. I really like anything out of that 2015 Prism because it's before things got too crazy. Yeah. His pop on his base is around 1,600. So it's gone up quite a bit over the last year, I think, but that's still not like nuts, same class as Jokic there. I think, his silver, though, is a pop of 177. If you can find that thing, that is also, over the last year, down 45% only 37 sales. But I mean, that was going for, at the peak of things, $7,000.
Yeah.
It's valued around $3,200 right now. I mean, this is a team that has a very strong chance of winning a championship. And in my opinion, I'd put them at the top of the list. He's still getting so much better. Chris Paul's only going to be around for a couple more years. Like, I don't think he's going anywhere as far as, I think there's even more room to grow from a both statistical standpoint and, a leadership alpha standpoint with Devin Booker. So someone that, if you're a Suns believer like I am, and you kind of are able to snag, even if it's on a place like Alt or something like that, his base at under the 500 whatever value it's valued at right now, $530. If you find that for around $500, I think that's a pretty good buy heading into the playoff run here.
I can't believe the age on some of these guys. I had to look up his age just to remind myself. He's 25.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It just seems nuts. Like
one year at Kentucky, came out, and that's it. That's the thing with these guys. 18 years old, 19 years old, they enter the league. And, Bradley Beal has been in the league literally forever. I think he's, did he just turn 30? Is he 29? Like, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Like, the league is in just such a good spot with all these young stars.
This is what I remember. I remember Bradley Beal came in at like 17.
Oh my God! Yeah, because he's out of the 2012 class we just talked about,
and so is Kyrie, right? But they were both one and done. But Kyrie is like a year younger than Brad. Something with Brad Beal was like so young for his age, where he was like 18 when he said, like, just turned 18 when he came in. He's been in the league for freaking 10 years and he's 28 years old. Like, it's wild, man. It's wild how young some of these guys are. So
the league is in such a good spot with all these young stars that we've talked about today. Whether you're buying, selling, or holding, the second half of the season promises to be fun. Promises to be fun from a hobby perspective as well. And we'll continue to break it down throughout the next couple of months and into the playoffs. But I want to get out of here on this winning formula with Gary Hartman, because the F1 season is right around the corner. Things are really going to start to heat up now that Drive to Survive, is that the right name of the series?
Yeah, it is.
Drive to Survive is on Netflix. The racing calendar is upon us. You were hitting me with all the nerdy F1 jargon before we hopped on air. I want you to catch the people up and what the people should be looking out for over the next couple of weeks as F1 really gets hot and heavy.
Yeah. So, you'll be hearing this over the weekend of March 4th through 6th. Next Friday, or this coming Friday, when you hear this, March 11th, Drive to Survive Season 4 comes out. So that kind of really kicks things off. They timed it perfectly, where it's going to come out right a week before the first Grand Prix, right during testing, which is kind of like the last preseason run in Bahrain, which is where the first Grand Prix is happening. So all this stuff's going to come right back into the forefront next week. And I actually think it's going to hit even more eyes than it ever has before, because baseball's not here, because Americans are looking for other sports, because this is now, the beginning of a season where it's going to be more popular than it ever was. And guess what? It takes place on Sunday mornings, where football star fans like me are really excited to have, something to look forward to on Sundays again. And this will be the first season I'm into it from the beginning. So I think since we've gone so long, we've gone longer than we expected, as we have a tendency to do. I think I want to save this for next week. We'll do a big F1 primer next week. But I just want to say, if you haven't, I would really strongly recommend checking out seasons 1 through 3 of F1 Drive to Survive over the next 2 weeks, March 18th through 20th. So I guess it'll be the March 20th is the first Grand Prix of the season. This coming March next weekend, March 10th, 11th, 12th is preseason testing in Bahrain. So that's basically going to be the final warm up. You're going to see all these drivers out in their cars. Everything has to be in place, ready to go for the first race of the season. And then from that point, we hit the ground running, and there will be Grand Prix either every week or once every 2 to 3 weeks. Sometimes they do them every week. Sometimes there's a week or two break in between. But every, it's kind of like golf, where it takes up the whole weekend. You have Friday practice, Saturday's qualifying, Sunday's the race. And 2021 F1 Tops paper came out a couple weeks ago. Didn't really do so well, and there's a lot of reasons for that. They came out with the price way too high, like it's $600 a box or whatever in resale right out the gate. It was way dumb. There was no autographs in the product, and Chrome was right behind it. So no one really wanted this. And honestly, I didn't either. But at least Topps understands the importance of and how successful this stuff was last year, and they made it a point to get this out. So Chrome will be coming soon. I think it's scheduled for next week, still on the calendar. I don't know if that's coming. That will be a popular product. That will be a popular product. And then when Sapphire comes right behind it, that will be a popular product. So we'll talk all about that stuff. And in anticipation of those releases next week, I'm going to do a whole breakdown of all the players that you need to know, drivers you need to go heading into the season, how markets have done in the offseason, and what to expect right when these things come up. Because I'll tell you what, that Sapphire and that 2020 Topps Chrome stuff, that market has stayed as strong as anything possibly could have during an offseason. So, really, really exciting for F1 and just both from a sports fan perspective and from a hobby perspective, because I think there's a lot of room for more eyeballs to get on this stuff. So really pumped, and we'll talk more about it in depth next week. That's going to be a priority.
Obviously a massive, massive global sport, but a niche that Gary has found and filled magnificently and made this a profitable endeavor for himself. I can't encourage you guys enough to kind of find your own niche, find stuff that you truly love and can get immersed into, and then the profits will follow from there, right? So we'll get into that next week. We go long as we always do, but I think that's a great place to leave it. A quick primer for the new listeners on the F1 world. We'll dive deep into winning formula with Gary Hartman next week, but this is a good place to leave it for Gary, for his Ja Morant Tiger Stripe PSA 10 that is still in his possession. I am Cody. We'll see you next week.
Take care, everybody.